Now we discuss the devolution of education or education policy in Pakistan. So education has always been a provincial subject in all three constitutions. So whether it's 1956 constitution or 1962 constitution or 1973 constitution, education was never part of the federalist, which was the areas or sectors which were assigned to the federal government. However, the reality, as we have discussed before also, federal government has controlled the education policy. And if we look at the last module in which we discussed different policies, they were all federal. So federal government was given policies starting from 1947 to 1951 and 1959 and 1972 and 1992 and 1998. So all these were federal policies. And this, even when education was a provincial subject, it was the federal government which took the initiative and made the programs and policies related to education. So why this anomaly? Why federal government was not ready to let education go to the provinces according to the constitution? So there were several reasons. For example, there was lack of bureaucratic expertise in provinces. So they thought that more experienced bureaucrats are in federal government, so they can make their policies, and the provincial governments, bureaucrats can only implement it. Then there was lack of professional expertise. So there were not many educationists or university professors or other related managers who can make these policies and think about these policies. So then, of course, the money was controlled by the federal government. So most of the divisible pool goes to the federal government. So they had more money. Then federal bureaucracy controlled everything. So the provincial bureaucracy is present, is there, but most of the positions, as we discussed before, even in provinces and district level, are manned by federal bureaucrats. Then, of course, the issue of Pakistan has always been ruled by one man or one party. So usually the prime minister or has never allowed other parties ruling in provinces. So usually they are dismissed and not allowed to work. So all these things have contributed to the control of education by the federal government. Then, of course, there is this fear in the federal bureaucracy and military and other people that if we give education to the provinces, there will be secessionist movements. And this idea has grown up after 1971, after the separation of East Pakistan. So even there is pressure on provinces to do away with their own regional language. Of course, Sindh and KP have resisted that, and they have retained their own regional language, Pashto and Sindhi, at the primary level. Then, of course, provinces are also afraid of losing away on vertical programs, so they have also not stood up and fought for their right. It was only after the 18th Amendment in 2010 that changed the scenario, and we have discussed before. And the 18th Amendment was helped by the 7th NFC award, which was passed in 2009. So these two developments helped devolve or devolution of education to the provinces. So Ministry of Education was devolved after 2010, and it became the Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training. So initially it was thought there will be no Ministry of Education after the Ministry of Education has been devolved to the provinces. But then, of course, a new ministry crop up. So what's the difference between the old Ministry of Education and the new Ministry of Federal Education? So the new ministry focuses on international and national coordination, non-formal and formal education, education policy, and skill development. So this is all the education that is there. So federal government can still intervene even after the devolution in everything that provinces are doing. So the idea that the education is devolved as far as this rules of business, or as well as the purpose of new Ministry of Education is concerned, the idea of devolution is not there. So the difference is that now the provinces are more autonomous. They know their rights and they have the money, and federal government doesn't have the money. So now the provinces can go forward and make their own policies and pay for it, while federal government can think of its policies, but it doesn't have the money or the power to force provinces to back down. And of course, there are other changes, like previously there was only the Higher Education Commission, and then now there are also provincial higher education commissions. Thank you.